he just went low. He's in his head. He's in his head. He's open. His head wide open. Cracked open in the face.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mario Mentos 100 back again with another episode of How's My Team. So we don't have to talk about the Giants this week. We'll obviously go over them in just a second because I do want to talk about a few things. But obviously we've got to talk about the Titans women's team going up against the Eels at home. We've got the Titans men's team going up against the Dolphins away at Suncorp Stadium. And we've also got to talk about Liverpool going up against Arsenal in basically a top four clash in the Premier League. So and then obviously we've got an extra little clip that I might put in a moment. But let's get this episode started. So I want to briefly mention the Giants because obviously the AFL home and away season is finished. Gold Coast ended up getting a big win, 95-point win over Essendon. So they move up to 7th, which means that we are playing at home against the Hawthorn Hawks in the elimination final on Saturday. I will be going to that game, so it will be my first finals game ever. It's going to be an interesting atmosphere. I think we're sitting a little bit further to the right than we usually do. I usually sit in the Sutter stand, like one of the member stands, even including the game in the Sydney Derby as well, although we were on top tier rather than bottom tier. But I think we're further around to behind the goalposts. I think on the Olympic Park station side of the ground of NG Stadium, so actually where a lot of the fans usually are around the goalpost. So we'll see. I'll see when I get there. Obviously, I'll have some photos and stuff like that for the game. Obviously, I'm going to put up some photos from the Tigers game from last week when I went to the West Tigers game against the Cowboys. I didn't end up putting some of those photos up last week. I'll be doing it after this segment. Obviously, want to briefly talk about the women's Giants team because obviously I haven't talked about them much. But obviously the AFLW season is up and running. Obviously the Giants are not doing great at the moment. They're second last, but haven't been too far away from, or there was one game that weren't far away from a win. Obviously we talked about them in their first game. We talked about them losing to Essendon by 56 points. Then the second game, they got beaten by a Collingwood side that hadn't won in well over a year, I'm pretty sure. And Collingwood won by 8 points, so it was 33-25. That was the week before. And then last week on Saturday, we got beaten pretty handily by 32 points over Adelaide Crows, which that one I don't mind as much. I know it's a big loss, but Adelaide have been around the mix, have won a couple of the AFL WCs and like Premiership Cups previously. They've been around the mix in the finals for pretty much almost the entire time of the competition. So them being in that position and winning by that amount of points, not a bad result. 2-10, obviously not great for the Giants. They do play on September the 6th at People First Stadium against Gold Coast, and Gold Coast are actually in last because they ended up getting belted by Port Adelaide for Port Adelaide's first win of the season. So it's Cellar Dweller game for the Giants and the Suns in the AFLW this coming week. So we'll see what happens with them. Obviously, actually September the 6th, is this weekend. But obviously that'll be playing it'll start a little bit before the men's game starts at NG, the elimination final. So obviously if people can catch the game, obviously watch some of the game. But AFLW, it's one of those things where some of the skill is there. It's just that obviously the women's teams aren't as professional as the men's team. And what I mean by that is that I don't mean that obviously the women don't try. It's just that it's not like a full-on job. Like it's like, like a 9 to 5 type of job for them, because a lot of these players are still working other jobs at the same time as playing AFLW football. So it's one of those things where and it's very much like how the NRLW started. And most of like the women's leagues, obviously, that had started recently in the last, like maybe the last decade, in Australia especially. That's what a lot of the women were like. They were, doing like playing football on the side or playing rugby league on the side while also doing other jobs as well. Or they've come from other sports to play particular like AFL or NRL, like rugby league, that sort of thing. So the league, I think, in terms of skill, there's still some really good skills in the women's game, but obviously the scores, apart from obviously Essendon belting us like 54, 60, like 70, usually there might be like the highest in terms of scores. Usually in terms of like a team total. You usually don't see well over 100 points that often. Though this week it happened and it ended up cracking like the highest winning goal, like the highest winning margin or the highest score scored by a team, I think got cracked twice in the same weekend. So so I think Port Adelaide was one of them, and I think North Melbourne was the other one. So ultimately, yes, it'll be the Suns and the Giants in the AFLW, and then the Giants after that. I got the Bulldogs, the Swans, West Coast Eagles, the Saints, the Cats, Freo, Carlton, and then finish with Port Adelaide in their season of AFLW. So it'll be interesting to see where they land. I don't know whether they'll make finals again, the Giants, but in terms of the AFLW season, obviously, but I'm not sure how they'll do. They might do okay. They might win a few games. They didn't win too many games last year. I think they only won 1 or 2 games last year, so they didn't do great. But but we'll be going to the elimination final when the Giants take on Adelaide Hawks, the Hawthorn Hawks. In the elimination final, and then I think whoever wins plays the loser of the Adelaide Collingwood qualifying final. So it's not going to get any easier, and ultimately not having the double chance was always going to be hard. But again, in saying that, if Collingwood is the one that loses in that game and the Giants do win, obviously yes, they'll have to go to the MCG. But the thing is, Collingwood are very vulnerable right now. And I can imagine that they're probably in a situation where they might not be favourites in that qualifying final, but we'll see what happens when it comes to the intensity, because obviously finals, as I said before, finals completely different game. Like home and away season, there's a lot that goes on in the home and away season, but goddamn, like when it comes down to the finals, anything can happen. And I say that as a Giants fan, because obviously last year we were in 4th, doing relatively well, leading both finals, and then we lose both of them. With a comeback win for both the Swans and the Lions. So I can see it. I can see things happening. I can see at least a team in the top 4 that can lose straight sets, and Collingwood is one of those that can lose straight sets, or at least in the way that the form is right now, they can lose straight sets, which is not going to be great for them. But I can see it happening, honestly. Alright, so this is recorded in the past. Obviously, you can see my Giants jersey. But obviously, since I recorded the last segment of last week's episode so late, I have a situation to talk about Liverpool because obviously they played today. Obviously, this is Tuesday. So they played today. They played against Newcastle United. And they come away with a win, another win. So 2 wins on the trot for Liverpool FC. It was going to be one of those situations where it was going to be an interesting game. It ended up being 1-0 at halftime for Liverpool. And just before, obviously, the halftime whistle was blown, Newcastle ended up with a red card. So they went down to 10 men, which is pretty crazy. Pretty crazy situation. But not a bad result. Obviously, it was 2-0 for Newcastle at that point, or against Newcastle. Newcastle pegged 2 back in the space of about 10-15 minutes. Oh, here we go. Actually got the key moments. It's good. So they scored in the 35th minute. Obviously with they actually ended up having two yellow cards. So yeah, so Liverpool scored in the 35th minute. There was 2 yellow cards just before halftime was done for Newcastle. And then obviously VAR got involved and upgraded the yellow card to a red card for Anthony Gordon. So Newcastle ended up being down to 10 men just before halftime. And then just after halftime, Liverpool scored the second goal. And then in the 57th minute and the 88th minute, Newcastle pegged 2 back. So it was actually like 25 minutes. And then obviously there was, I think, 11 minutes of stoppage time. And in the 10th minute of stoppage time, the 16-year-old, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Rio Ngumoa. I don't even know. That's Ngumoha. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. I'd have to watch a highlight for that. But he scored in the 10th minute of stoppage time and put Liverpool ahead 3-2 against Newcastle. And then obviously the full-time whistle was blown. And I guess for Liverpool, guess it's kind of payback for the League Cup final, because obviously I think that was the last time that we played Newcastle. And yeah, that's the one that pops up. But yeah, so the League Cup was the last time that we played them. Obviously they won their first trophy in quite a long time. But yeah, so 3-2, that puts us in a situation where they put us, can I look at the table? Oh, that's the standings. So that puts Liverpool in third position, obviously. Arsenal at the top, because they obviously won by quite a lot in their game earlier this weekend. Spurs are in second. Liverpool in third, Chelsea in fourth, Nottingham Forest in fifth, and Man City slide down to sixth, and with Sunderland dropping to seventh at this point in time. And everybody's got a point except for Wolverhampton and West Ham at the bottom with nothing at the moment. So not a bad situation right now. Obviously Liverpool being in that top four, very important for them. Obviously their next game is very, very big, because September 1st, so obviously it's a Monday game for me in the morning. But they play at 1:30 in the morning, my time, against Arsenal. So we'll be talking about them very, very shortly. In fact, actually, we'll probably be in a different outfit for it. But obviously 3-2 over Newcastle. But we obviously have a game to talk about coming up very, very shortly. But obviously I will add them as an addendum to this video. So obviously when we talk about Liverpool, I'll add this to the end. But obviously 3-2 over Newcastle United for Liverpool, and in third position at the moment on the table, which is great. Then we head over to EPL this morning and we talk about Liverpool against Arsenal. And it was a very, very tight contest. It was only 1-0. 1-0 win for Liverpool over Arsenal. And it was a relatively late-ish game, late-ish goal in the game. Obviously, it was 0-0 at half-time. Obviously, the free kick, what time was it at? Does it say? Don't think it says. Oh no, we're going to scroll down, almost right to the bottom. 82nd, 83rd minute on the clock. Yeah, so it was a great strike from a free kick. So 1-0 win for Liverpool over Arsenal, which puts Liverpool right at the top by themselves in first position. Obviously, Chelsea are in second with 7 points, so they ended up getting another win. Obviously, they got a draw. I think they got a draw last week. So Arsenal drops to third, Spurs drops to fourth, Everton jumps up to fifth, Sunderland jumps up a spot into sixth position, and Bournemouth and Crystal Palace jump into seventh and eighth, respectively, with Man United jumping up to ninth with that. I believe they had a draw against Fulham. Actually, no, I think they got a win this week. Yeah, they got a win after, obviously, their campaign in the I say Cabrera Cup, but that's not how it's pronounced. That they ended up losing to Grimsby Town earlier this week, so late last week, so not great. Man City lost again, so they've already dropped right down to 13th right now, so they're in a really bad spot in terms of their situation. Now, obviously, we do have to wait until the 14th for our next game in the EPL, and that will be against Burnley. And then after that, we'll actually have Champions League football start on the 18th, on the Thursday, because we go up against Atletico Madrid at Anfield. So Champions League will start once again very, very soon. But yeah, late Sunday game for me. It's 11 o'clock at night on Sunday, the 14th, with the Burnley game. And then obviously after, we have 3 games in the space of a week, because obviously we got Burnley, then we've got the Atletico Madrid game in the Champions League, and then on the Saturday after that, on the 20th, it's against Everton. So pretty chock-a-block for September, but again, we've got a little bit of a break just before the Burnley game as well, which is not that bad. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, 1-0 win over Arsenal, like we did last year against Arsenal, and Liverpool goes to the top of the EPL ladder. So next we go to the Titans, and we'll go with the Titans men, because they technically did play first. They played the 4 o'clock, or just after the 4 o'clock game, in the prime time slot on Sunday, or like Sunday afternoon footy. And it was another loss. It was a loss to the Dolphins, though the result actually ended up being very close. It was 36 points to 30 at the end of it. And obviously the start kind of killed us a little bit, because the Dolphins scored 3 tries relatively early in quick succession without scoring. We did get it back to 18 all at halftime, and then obviously with they ended up scoring, I think, 2 tries after halftime, and they kept that 12-point buffer for a while. Like if we'd score, they'd score, and they'd get ahead by 12 instead of by 6. It wasn't until like the last like 6-7 minutes that we scored to get it within 6. And we did make a line break. We did obviously. I think Bo dropped the ball. I think it was into a lead of a try in the lead up to a try, which was unfortunate. But the defense for the Dolphins was okay, but obviously leaking 30 points for them, not a great result. Obviously, they just had to keep winning at this point, putting pressure on the Roosters. But obviously, the Roosters have got that game against the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs obviously coming off a bye, but obviously their last game of the season. If the Roosters win, they're in the finals at this point. So it's going to be interesting for them in particular. But obviously the Dolphins and Manly have a chance to get in if the Rabbitohs do beat their long-time rivals in the Sydney Roosters. But it was a close game. Ultimately, they pulled it out of the fire a little bit. Kieran Foran scored a try. Obviously, he hadn't scored a try. I think he had actually scored a try all year. So he broke the duck, which is good. And it was close. Like I thought that maybe this was a game that ultimately the Dolphins could have lost, and it looked like in some situations that with the Titans getting closer and closer to in terms of score, it looked like the Dolphins were going to possibly shit the bed and possibly lose the game, which would have been great for us because obviously we would have moved off the bottom of the ladder with other results going our way earlier in the day. But unfortunately, we are still on the bottom, which means that we have one game left to get off the bottom of the ladder. Obviously, we're up against Newcastle in terms of making sure that we don't get the wooden spoon. So we do have the Tigers. The Tigers are in 11th right now, obviously, with a couple of wins in front of us. So we have them at home. And Newcastle have Parramatta, and I believe that might be in Parramatta. I'm not sure. But their for and against is minus 244 right now, and the Titans is minus 207. So if we do end up winning, obviously we'll jump them if the Knights lose, and the Knights will end up in last and get the wooden spoon. If we don't win, obviously we'll get the wooden spoon. But if the Knights do win, obviously, which I'm not sure if that game actually. Let me check it on the NRL page because I'm not sure when that game is supposed to be. Because I think that ultimately it might be the late game on a Saturday or something like that. Because I think that the Newcastle Knights are playing Titans women, I think. We got to wait till Sunday, and then yes, it is at CommBank. So if we win on Saturday against the Tigers, which is the mid game on Saturday, it's the 5:30 game. If we can beat the Tigers, we have to wait until Sunday in the last game of the season to see if we get off the bottom of the ladder or not. But obviously, if Newcastle want to avoid the wooden spoon, if they do end up winning, they'd have to win by like 30 or 40 points. And like if the Titans ended up winning, they'd have to win by like 30 or 40 points at that point. They'd have to win first and foremost. Obviously, if they win, they're in. But if they lose, then yeah, it's last chance saloon for both sides to get out of the situation of getting the wooden spoon for them. But obviously it was adamant in defeat for the Titans. It's just obviously that letting in 2 tries after halftime very early, and then obviously the first 3 tries in the first half as well. Obviously the points against the Cowboys is relatively close, but obviously they got the bye next week, so they're for and against is not going to be any bigger or smaller So they will finish up in with 25 points. So if the Tigers and the Eels lose and the Rabbits also lose, the Cowboys will jump all the way up to 11th, which is crazy. But yeah, so last chance saloon for the Titans at home on the mid-Saturday game against the Tigers. And then obviously last chance saloon for the Knights if the Titans end up winning away from home at CommBank Stadium against the Eels. But 36 points to 30 loss for the men's team against the Dolphins at Suncorp. Could be a worse result, but losses are still a loss. So, especially this time of year, not great in the position that we're in. But starting probably about 10-15 minutes after the Titans men's team was finished, obviously at Cbus, the Titans women's team were playing, and it was a 26-10 win over the Parramatta Eels. So it was a 16-point win. Great result. They were holding Parramatta out. I think it was 20 points to nil just before half time. And then obviously the Eels did score right on half time. Yeah, literally 10-15 seconds before half time. Yeah, it was 20 points to nil. Then we got ahead 20 points to 24 points to 4, 26 points to 4, and then with the conversion, and then obviously they scored probably a little bit around the 49th, 50th minute, so about halfway through the second half, and then there was no scores after that. But with that result in mind, thankfully, what that does with 2 games left, that keeps us in 6th position, but also gives us a 3-point buffer as well. Because obviously with the draw against the Bulldogs in Magic Round, we're now on 9 points, whereas the next team under us, which is obviously the Warriors, and then followed by the Dragons, the Eels, and the Raiders, they're all on 6 points. So for us to miss finals at this point, obviously we got Newcastle in Newcastle next week, which is why I was like, the women's game, the women's game is before the men's game, but it's at McDonald Jones rather than obviously the Newcastle Knights men's team also playing there. They're playing obviously, like I said, in CommBank, so hopefully they get a good turnout for the Knights at home. But obviously that is 5th against 6th because obviously the Knights have lost a couple of games on the trot. They lost against the Sharks, relatively close against the Sharks just the weekend just gone by. Obviously they lost to the Roosters and they lost to the Broncos as well. I can't believe, I'm not sure if they lost to the Cowboys. I forget. I'd have to have a look properly. But thankfully for the Titans, if any of those... excuse me. I don't know what the fuck happened there with my voice then. But if the Warriors, the Dragons, the Eels, or the Raiders want to get into finals, they're hoping that the Titans would have to lose both of their games. At this point, obviously, it could be the Knights as well. Like the Knights have got 10 points. It'd just be on for and against them, which obviously they're ahead by, they're in 41 in the positive, the Knights at the present moment. And all the other teams that are trying to catch up are all in negative, including obviously the Titans in 6th position. But a 16-point win over the Eels kind of helped with that because it's down to minus 18 now. But they would have to hope that the Titans or the Knights would lose both of their games, because if either team win one of their next 2 games, which obviously for the Knights, one is against the Titans and the other one is against one of the teams in the bottom, I think it might be the Eels or the Tigers or something like that. I don't know if they've played them. I think they've already played the Dragons at this point. Could be the Cowboys, I'm not sure. But obviously the Titans have obviously got Newcastle and the Raiders. So obviously for the Raiders, if they end up winning next week and the Titans lose, that's going to be a big game for the Raiders as well. And that is, I think that's away from home too. No, it's at Cbus. Sorry, it is at Cbus. So it's going to be a big game for them if they end up winning this coming week. But they'd have to hope that the Titans or the Knights or both teams would somehow lose both games. But with both teams, obviously, you know, even with a draw, the Knights would win. They'd get into finals because obviously they're on 10 points right now. And the highest that the other teams would go is 10 points. So any points that they get right now, they're in finals. They're confirmed for finals. But in terms of the Titans, they'd have to lose both of their games to get knocked out. But they still have a potential, obviously, if they lose both of their games, to obviously keep their position. Obviously, other results would have to go their way. And obviously, Canberra have got the Roosters next week, so not a great result for them. The Eels have got the Tigers next week, so they've got a potential to go into 8 points next week. The Dragons have got the Cowboys, and the Warriors have got the Broncos. So in those two teams' case, and being in 7th and 8th, that could be a bad situation, especially for the Warriors if the Broncos just dominate like they have been all year. It's not going to be a great result for them, and obviously for the Raiders, it's not going to be a great result for them either because their for and against is arguably the worst in the teams at the moment, and they still haven't actually played the Roosters yet, which is crazy. And the fact that obviously they're at a minus 129 in the negative in terms of points like for and against, and obviously if I look at the Roosters right now, their for and against is 198 in the positive. So obviously with the Broncos being ahead at 222 in the positive. But obviously for them, they're already confirmed. I think the Sharks are confirmed as well. I'm not sure about the Cowboys. I haven't seen that yet. I would imagine they would be on 12 points. I don't think they'd miss finals. So it's only the Knights and the Titans that could probably drop out. But obviously a win against the Eels definitely helped the Titans with that 3-point buffer. Obviously can still miss finals, but they'd have to lose both the games against Newcastle and against Canberra. But still a good win, a good win, 16-point win at home for the Titans women's team. Not a bad result at all. And that'll be it for this episode of How's My Team. Obviously, we didn't have to talk about too much this week, but the episode might be about the same. I'm not sure. It could be a little bit less in terms of length of time. Obviously, I didn't have to rant about the Titans men's team this week. They did have obviously a better effort this week compared to weeks gone by, which obviously with Des Hasler being sacked, Josh Hannay being signed. They wanted a bigger result. Obviously, they didn't win, but the effort was there. And obviously, with Tino grilling a lot of the team earlier last week in terms of saying that it was only the coaches that have been sacked that have been, like the sole responsibility in terms of how bad the club is at the moment is on those two in terms of Des Hasler and obviously Justin Holbrook as well. And not everybody else taking accountability. I like that. I think that obviously with that, who knows with Tino whether he's going to stay at the Titans or leave. I'm hoping he stays. Obviously, big captain, probably one of the players that gives in effort pretty much every single game that he plays, even when he's injured. And he's a good captain. I'm hoping that, rumours of obviously the Storm being interested in him. And I'm guessing like a lot of teams will be interested in players obviously at the Titans in general that have obviously played in previous teams as well. Obviously Tino being somebody that's come from the Storm originally going to the Titans. But I'm hoping that they don't poach him or like Perth, obviously with that whole salary cap situation. Obviously that goes against the rules of the salary cap and knowing it's basically like insider trading is what it kind of seems like. Is that obviously one of the people that used to work around the salary cap in terms of the Titans team is working for the administration, I think, in Perth, and manipulating contracts in a way before they obviously left the Titans to go to that position so that teams could poach those players. Now, obviously, I don't know whether it's a situation with the similar situation with the clauses that have been in like David Fafita's contract that have been rumoured, and obviously Tino's as well. Obviously, that was another rumour late last year, obviously, with the Titans not doing as well with the David Fafita and Tino possibly going, with the fact that, and even they said it a couple of years ago when obviously Holbrook left as well. I was like, oh, they got clauses to say that, oh, if Holbrook goes, like David Fafita might move or Tino can move and all that type of stuff. And it's, yeah, I don't know whether that's included in that, but if it is, that's kind of a bit scummy. But obviously the team will probably have a clean out. We might see like David Fafita going to the Rabbitohs, which, you know, if he wants to do it, go right ahead. You haven't done much for the Titans, honestly, in the last couple of years. And it's been like, we pay you this big amount of money, and that's probably another issue, is paying so much in terms of overs, in terms of money for certain players that haven't performed at all for this team. It's just not feasible for this team. But, you know, they did have effort put in to the game against the Dolphins, so I will give them credit where credit is due for that. There's obviously a few players that have obviously been playing, trying to play well in every game this year. You know, like Jaden Campbell, obviously he's had his off days, but he's one of them. AJ's always gives 100, and obviously the saying is 110%, but obviously he gives his all and then some during the game. Tino's obviously another player. Chris Randall's another one. Obviously, has played multiple positions in this team for a long time now. He gives more effort than some of the other players do. But yeah, so obviously close loss, still another loss, but obviously the effort was there. Great win for the Titans women's team. Obviously one step into finals with that win, thankfully, with a couple of points buffer, which obviously, like I said to you a couple of weeks ago, that draw might come in handy, and it looks like it's going to. If we win one of the two games coming up against Newcastle or Canberra for the Titans, because that means that they will make finals, which would be great for them because they just missed out last year. So great for them. Obviously Liverpool going to the top of the table with a win over Arsenal, and then obviously the Giants we didn't have to talk about because they got the bye week, but they're obviously playing next week in an elimination final at home. So, you know, on all fronts, very busy. Obviously, Wanderers, as I'm wearing the jersey today, nothing's going on with that right now. We'll see what the A-League season looks like because we don't know what the fixtures look like because of the whole Western United situation, which, if obviously you hadn't heard, their license actually got revoked by the A-League at the moment. Obviously, Western United are appealing that decision at the moment, but obviously it's to financial issues. Not because obviously the team can't give effort, because obviously they were in the finals last year, relatively close to getting into a grand final, and also in a situation where they won the A-League trophy a couple of years back. So it's not a situation of there's no effort there and there's no players, but it's just a financial issue, which teams in the league have had issues like this before. Perth Glory is one that comes to mind. Newcastle always ended up being another one that also comes to mind in that similar vein. Obviously, they worked out deals and that sort of thing, and I hope that Western United can work out a deal. It's not looking great, but I'm hoping that obviously they don't have to leave the league. But you know, rules are rules. If they do have to leave, it's unfortunate, obviously, especially for the supporters of the team. And I haven't obviously talked about it much because obviously there's not much to say in terms of the decision obviously coming down from Football Australia and obviously the A-League and all that type of stuff, in terms of whether the club folds completely, whether they play like other teams from the comp, like say Gold Coast United or the North Queensland Fury, like teams of that nature, being added into like the NPL sides in terms of their particular states. Obviously, with Western United to be NPL Victoria, I would imagine. And then obviously their like women's team, who knows for that, but yeah, it's just a really interesting situation that doesn't have a lot on it at the moment. Obviously, we won't know what happens. So, A-League fixture is not out yet. I don't think it will be out for maybe another month or two. I think they're supposed to be playing. They should be playing in October, which is another thing altogether, I think, if the season goes on. But the season might be shortened if obviously Western United are not playing, because obviously they won't have as many buys. In fact, they probably won't have any buys unless it's 2 buys per team, basically every week. But who knows at this point? They'll have to work that out. But yeah, with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of How's My Team. This has been Mario Man 100. You guys have a great day and night, and of course, take care.